Hello, welcome back to the show. I'm so happy that you're tuning in today. I have such a treat for us. I have an incredible interview with a friend of mine. We actually met in a networking group and it's turned into a beautiful friendship. I've been on her podcast and now I had the pleasure of interviewing her. Her name is Po Hong Yu, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a minute. But um, I think the way that we met speaks to the power of networking. And it's something that often I think is lost in online business, or that we forget that just showing up and letting people get to know us and genuinely getting to know them without necessarily wanting needing there to be a sale or a transaction right away is so valuable. And you know, it's really the heart of a lot of business, and especially as online business owners and I think younger generations, we've kind of lost and forgotten how valuable it can be. So I would suggest, if you run a business and you're wanting to, create more genuine relationships that can turn into clients, collaborations, joint ventures, to consider finding a networking group, whether it's local and you go in person, or if it's an online group like what Po and I are in. So let me tell you a little bit about Po, because you are going to love her and her energy. She is an emotional alchemist, a somatic healer, a spiritual guide, and a self intimacy coach. She has a great podcast called the Tao of Po podcast. She guides women in reclaiming their body, their power, their voice, and their aliveness so that they can step into their purpose in the world. And the foundations of her teachings are based on Taoism, body wisdom, energetics, and the practice of surrendering to the human experience. She is just a wealth of knowledge, and she's gone through her own incredible healing journey to get to this place. So let's dive right into the interview. Welcome to the Joyous Path to Millions podcast with me, your host, Emily June Wilcox, serial entrepreneur, seven-figure business owner, mindset junkie, creator of the Money Wound Medicine program, devoted mama of two, and lover of coffee and crystals. My mission is to put more money in the hands of soulpreneurs through healing money wounds, building abundant businesses, and balancing masculine and feminine energy. When we do this, we collectively up-level the frequency of the planet and help usher in new paradigm wealth. Each week, a new episode will air featuring expert advice, live coaching, and guest interviews where we'll dive into honest money conversations and the behind-the-scenes truth of building our aligned fempires. We all deserve a healthy, empowered relationship with money so we can experience more freedom, pleasure, and joy on our joyous path to millions. So get ready and let's dive in. Po, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And to everyone listening, I was on Po's amazing podcast and we went deep on inner child healing and all the things. So that's a great episode to check out as well. But I'm excited for us to jam on you and your business, your entrepreneurial journey, your money story. So I think we just kind of start at the top. So, I mean, you call yourself an emotional alchemist. So tell me, how did you get into this work?
Well, it was something that called me because of my own personal experiences, just like probably every other healer out
Yeah.
there. So I always felt disconnected from myself because of my sexual traumas. I was very disconnected from my emotions and my body, very disassociated, and deep shame and self-hatred and things like that for a long time. I would say about 20 years. So because of all that trauma, it guided me into my own healing journey. And I realized very quickly as I started my healing journey, which was a progression, right? Of course,
Yeah.
It's not like just this one moment, but I did have a moment where I realized, oh, what I thought was emotions was just me in suffering. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh, I'm such an emotional, spiritual person, which I am. But when I was in the depression, I thought it was just emotions. And no, that was just more swampy,
Mm,
just like being in my head and like just feeling sorry for myself and things like that. Right.
yeah.
And so it wasn't until I was able to actually differentiate between pain versus suffering where I started to learn how to alchemize my emotions.
Mm,
So it really was me differentiating the difference between the two.
yes. And define alchemy for everyone listening, because I feel like that's one of those terms where most of us have heard it, but we're like, I don't know for sure if I know exactly what that means.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, so I'm also an acupuncturist, right? So I was an acupuncturist since 2011, and what we talk about in the energetic and emotional realm is that we transform energy, and every emotion is an energy. So anytime we are feeling an emotion, we can transform it into something else. And so that's really what alchemy is. And that's what we do in acupuncture as well. That's not what I do as a job now, but that's where I started learning about alchemy first, really.
Mm,
So it's the transformation from one energy into another. And so emotions live in our body. And so if we don't process or alchemize or transmute it, then it just sits there and impacts our nervous system and our belief systems and how we feel in our body, our health, things like that.
yes. Yes, 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 yes. And when you were in that suffering, when you were feeling really dissociated from your body, did it feel like normal to you? Was there a moment when you realized, "Oh, this isn't normal. There's something else, and so now I'm going to seek out healing?"
I knew, I mean, there was a point that I just thought it was normal because that's what I got used to, right? I just lived my life in a certain way, so it was normal for me,
Yeah.
and I could feel, I always had a knowing deep inside of me, and I honestly think that everybody has access to this, even if it's so tiny, and it was really tiny for me at first, but it was like this desire that lived inside of me. And so I knew that there was other possibilities for me, even though this was normal life for me. And also I didn't know how to get to that possibility, but I don't know, there was always this fire in me, even in my
Mm,
darkest moments. And actually in those darkest moments were when I would be able to connect with that fire because I was in such a place of desperation
mm,
and I wanted and needed to get out of it. That's when I could tap into this tiny little speck of light that was felt like a gazillion miles away from me, to tap into that and like really devote myself to moving towards it. I have a specific memory of being around late 20s, around 27 or so. And you'll never, this is, I know you're all into, you work with money. So this is actually quite funny. I lost about $30,000 in online gambling. And yeah, so I was out of control for the longest time, like addictions, you name it. Like I was just a hot mess, essentially, and very much in deep pain. And so I hit a bottom, and it was like I was metaphorically on the ground. And I had this image come to me intuitively, like I was in a tunnel, a really, really dark tunnel. It was like pitch black, and I'm on the ground. And I saw in the distance at the very end of the tunnel, which was like miles and miles away from me, this little tiny speck of light.
mm,
And it was that light was my desire. And my desire at that point was just happiness because I didn't think I was ever going to be happy ever. I thought I was going to die depressed. And so I just kept my focus on that light and committed on a soul level. Like I will do anything, absolutely anything to get to that light. And so if that meant crawling, then I crawled. So that's how I started. Like I just took one crawl at a time. And eventually over time, then I could stand up. And then over time I could, maybe my walking sped up. It's just like how I learned to like exercise. 1 minute of jogging was so exhausting, right? So I
Yeah.
worked my way up in expanding my capacity. And so it took years, it took quite a while for me to get to a place, probably 7 years or so, until I got to a place of like, oh my God, I'm actually happy.
Mm,
So that fire in me, that desire of freedom and liberating myself was so fierce that I was not willing to settle for anything less. And then from there, I was able to expand into more desires and, oh, what else is possible, right? So
mm,
a big part of what I share with people in my message is that anything is possible. I
yeah.
mean, there's certain things that are not possible, like physically, but in general, yes, I believe that anything is possible.
Mm. And when you were on this 7-ish year healing journey, were you working as an acupuncturist at the time? Or that was
Not yet.
pre-acupuncture
Um,
career?
I started acupuncture school around 33 years old. So it was a couple of years after
Okay.
acupuncture school.
Okay.
So acupuncture was definitely a big part of my journey as well, like
Yeah.
learning about the mind body energetic connection, but also holding space and guiding other people in their healing was an amazing mirror for me.
Ah, yeah. So can you share like what were some of the healing modalities that made the most impact on you?
Yeah, well, I would say the first thing is connecting with my body and the sensations in my body. So, like I said, I was so disconnected and disassociated. I didn't even know what a sensation was. And so I have
Mm,
so much empathy for clients that I work with, and they're like, I don't know, I can't even feel that, right? And so that's how I felt.
yeah.
I didn't know how to even identify that feeling.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning part of my, self-development, healing. I mean, there was parts before that because my dad is my spiritual teacher and he was with me the whole time. And
Mm,
so I've always had um this connection to spirituality,
mhm.
but I didn't know how to embody it, right? So feeling these sensations and really giving myself permission to feel my emotions,
Yeah.
what I was saying before, my actual pain, like the grief, my anger, like actually feeling those raw emotions versus like spinning in my head and being swampy, like that was a game changer for me.
Right, right. And when you say that your dad's your spiritual teacher, like, is he, like, actually a really spiritual guy? Because otherwise and sometimes people say that, and it's like, essentially what they're saying is like, "This is the person who triggered the hell out of me and taught me all the lessons that then I ended up healing."
Yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely had issues with him when I was younger, but that's not what I mean. My dad used to actually be a Jesuit priest before he met my
Okay.
mom, and then he turned like he after he left, and then he's been a spiritual teacher for many people. He
Wow.
focuses on Taoism.
Yeah.
He's an enlightened master. Like
Wow.
he's literally an enlightened master. He just turned 92 in July. He's
Wow.
the most like I mean, he radiates light. Like just
Mm.
being in his field, you feel the depth of love. I mean, he's just next level. He's the real deal.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that you were able to recognize that and in some respects, like, have that kind of I don't know if you would call it like a guru disciple relationship, but like you know, a master and student sort of relationship with your dad because that can be super complicated.
Oh my God, it's been such a gift. He's my best friend, and I literally could tell him anything. Like when I was smoking weed, I was like, "Oh, bah, I want to stop smoking weed. I have so much shame around that." And he would never judge me. He literally is the most approving person, and he's the one who said, like, your shame around smoking is actually worse than you smoking.
Mm,
So he is just like next level, but also he would hold me and guide me through my deepest and darkest moments.
Mm.
And so not only did he teach me, but he taught me what it really means to be a holder and a facilitator of transformation and how to surrender. And
Wow.
so just, yeah, it wasn't complicated at all, actually. I just felt like, holy shit, like how lucky am I to
Yeah.
have this person in my life who is, you know, willing and able to hold such unconditional space.
Oh, that is so cool. Well, and your
Yeah.
website is taoofpo.com, right? So is that
Yes.
like a little nod to your dad?
So it's interesting because acupuncture, the foundation of acupuncture is Taoism.
Okay.
And then my dad became a Taoist. So it's like the paths aligned divinely. I didn't plan that, just like
Yeah.
all happened
Yeah.
naturally. And so the foundation of my teachings are based on yin and yang
Mm,
energy, the
mhm.
feminine and
Yeah.
masculine energy. And he teaches, like, he taught me the power of the feminine,
Mm.
like yin, he says, is the mother. And so, yeah, it's a nod to him, to my roots,
Yeah.
to the depth of work that is that comes from Taoism, which is really from nature.
Yeah. I love that. What do you think most people misunderstand about masculine and feminine energy?
This is a great question, because there's been such a revival, or this, the feminine has come out, and they're like, everybody's like the divine feminine, divine feminine. I see how that the masculine has been left behind,
Mm.
and that has been diminished. And so some people are just so free flowing and thinking that, just being in their emotions is being feminine, but it really is about the connection between the two.
Yeah.
And it's not about one being better than the other or any kind of hierarchy. It's about how these energies work as one. And so I never minimize the power of the mind, right?
Mm.
I don't say that the body is more important. I just know that most women that I work with who are successful and smart, they have disconnected from their body because
Yes.
similar experiences like me. So they just need to be taught how to reconnect with their feminine energy, but not in a way of dismissing the masculine or the
Mm.
mental aspects. Because I think structure and focus and, all these things that are connected to the masculine are super important. And
Yes.
also, I call myself a practical mystic. So, like, I'm super grounded, I'm efficient. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I think that, so I think that's interesting because I think that it's gone to the other extreme.
Right.
Have you experienced that as well?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, firsthand, because I was so in the wounded masculine for so long that then I swung in the other direction when I started my coaching business. I'm like, I'm not doing anything unless it's intuitively guided.
Yeah,
And it's like torturous in some ways now when I look back on that because I think a lot that we do in the name of freedom and like, well, I'll launch that when I feel like it. It's like it's not actual freedom because you end up just thinking and wondering and worrying because there's no plan. And the plan or the structure, the calendar, the system, that's all like the masculine energy that actually allows us to feel safe and more truly free. When we're just in the feminine, it it's not real freedom.
exactly, exactly. And that's something that I've just been feeling so much about because, like, I teach stuff that has to do with the mind, right? Mindset work is really important. Like, how can we actually cultivate the mind? How can we cultivate the power of the mind
Yeah.
and where we can focus our mind? It's so important.
Yeah.
We can't
Yeah.
forget these parts.
Right, right. No, it's so true. But like you said, it's it it's that we were too much in our minds, and that's why we're
Yes.
giving more emphasis to the body now because she's gotta come on board. We've gotta be able to tap into her and drop in but not at the expense of the mind.
Yeah, it's really about the integration of the two,
Yeah,
that union. And really it does, yeah, a lot of times we have to go to the other extreme to find that middle, balance
right.
space.
Yeah. And I know you somewhat recently ran a program around essentially like sacred rage. I can't remember what you called it, but for women, I think that that anger and that rage can be a really tricky emotion to access. And often we think we don't have it because culturally it's not allowed. Like men are allowed to be angry and women are allowed to be sad. but
Totally. Yep.
but not in reverse. So I'd love to just hear any wisdom that you have around that sacred rage and what it looks like to allow yourself to experience it and alchemize it.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say that I've been really noticing patterns with all the women that I've worked with, and one is people pleasing or codependency, overgiving, and so they've like shoved their voice down and their expression down because they're constantly focusing on the external and other people versus themselves. And also another one is tightness in the chest and throat or the jaw. I work very closely with body wisdom. Acupuncture has really taught me a lot. Chinese medicine is amazing because it shows you what can be wrong by looking at the symptoms of your body.
Yeah.
And so the liver is on the right side. And so I noticed that people who have a lot of right sided issues, they have a lot of times repressed anger in their body,
Mm,
and or fibroids or headaches, things like that, or even depression, anxiety can be caused by repressed anger and rage. Also, this lack of boundaries. Lack of boundaries is a major part of it. Like, and then they become resentful because they're not actually speaking up for themselves. So there's patterns that I'm noticing, which is very interesting. And the key is really trusting that you can go into this space of feeling and not get stuck there, because that's a
mm,
big fear of a lot of people, is that, oh, if I go there I'll get stuck, I'll just be angry all the time, or I'll lose control and I'll hurt somebody else or I'll hurt myself. And then also the ones who are more internalized, like more of the nice girls, they actually have like the most rage, and so they're more afraid, like, I don't think I can even touch my anger because it's so far removed. But either way, in this process of anger alchemy, it's really about softening into the body
mm.
and allowing yourself to be with the sensations that arise in those moments of activation and triggers, right? And then that can guide them into the inner child wound, as we talked about inner children on my podcast, as you mentioned. And so, what I found is that there's so many inner children that are fucking angry
Yeah.
and don't even know it. Like, a lot of these people have no idea how angry these inner children are. So when we go to the root of the healing with the inner children and their rage and give them what they need, then miraculous things happen. It's been amazing, the transformations that have been happening because of the anger alchemy work.
Oh, I believe it. Thank you so much for speaking to that. And I will say, having young kids, it really helps me hold so much space for our inner child because I see my actual children and they have rage and they have anger and the intensity of the emotion. And I can even notice the parts of me that are like, "Ugh, this is really inconvenient right now. Like, what could I do just to get them to behave?" And so it also gives me empathy for my parents and all of our collective parents and the things that they did that ultimately ended up just suppressing that anger. And so then it just stayed stuck in our bodies. But the fascinating thing is that it's like when we just allow ourselves to be with it, and same thing with my kids, it's like they will rage and rage and rage, and it feels like it's gone on for a year and it's really been 8 minutes, and then they're, like, so done. They're happy, they're joyful, they're, like, ready to see the positives in whatever the aspect is, and there's actually, like, very little intervention or true parenting that's needed. It's we like, when we often wanna lean in, it's really just because we're trying to, like, handle the situation for optics reasons because it's uncomfortable for the rest of us. But
Yep.
when you just let it rip, it does go away on its own. And on the other side is
Absolutely.
not more anger, it's more joy.
Exactly. There's more joy, there's more peace, there's more orgasmic energy. Main reason why women are not orgasmic is, I read a book called The Extended Orgasm. They said it's because of anger.
Oh,
And so I have clients that have done this anger alchemy work with me, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to feel more connected to my erotic self. I feel more turned on. And it's just a natural byproduct. And so it's peace, it's joy, it's orgasmic energy, it's all the good stuff, the
yes.
connection to love, like, but we have to allow ourselves and trust that we can move through it. And it really is just surrendering to the feeling. And because repressed feelings, with kids it's faster, right? Because they don't have as much experience, but over decades of holding the repressed feelings, it takes more time to actually go in to do that deeper work, and it's more of a process, and an excavation, right, that
Yeah.
happens there. So and some people have a really hard time even tapping into their inner children because they feel very disconnected for them as well.
Yeah.
So it really is about deep compassion more than anything.
Yeah. Well, and you've been starting to work with plant medicine as well to help, kind of unlock some of those locked doors, right? To help your clients access those parts of themselves. Can you share what that's been like?
Yeah, I mean, psilocybin mushrooms is a really beautiful medicine because it helps us to soften, like all this, that we're talking about, soften the nervous system, soften the body, but also help to rewire the nervous system, to rewire your limiting beliefs and habitual ways of being. And so I found that it's such an amazing tool to work with, especially in the work that I do. And, not just with healing trauma, but like expanding your capacity for pleasure and like literally just expanding the whole thing. Because the more we expand and heal the dark stuff,
Yes.
like we said, we expand the good stuff. We can be in more gratitude. So it really is a beautiful, I mean, working with the medicine is just like a game changer.
Yeah.
It's an accelerator, essentially.
Yeah. I love that. And it feels so right. And I know you have lots of clients signing up for it too, which is always a good indicator that, you know, the people are ready. And
Yes. I mean, there's so much research and the documentaries, so people are starting to understand because a lot of people need the science to back it up, right?
yeah,
So they're seeing how amazing this process is,
yeah,
microdosing, right? And so not everybody's ready for a deep dive, and that's okay. Or they might not ever want to do it, and that's okay too.
yeah,
But microdosing is great because it's sub-perceptual,
right,
and that means that you're not experiencing the actual psychedelic effects.
right.
And so you could just live your life doing your thing, but also having a deep healing and rewiring of your nervous system experience.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's been my experience with it is that it's super subtle and, you know, it's like less altering than a cup of coffee, than that much
Oh,
caffeine. Yeah.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, it helps with so many things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, PTSD, menopause, even. So there's all these ways that it can support. But the thing that I always say is, like, let's not treat it as if it's a pill,
Right.
right? Where it's here to fix us. It's something that we actually work with it
Yes.
and create a relationship with it. And the integration is so important. You don't
Yes.
expect it to just do the thing. You have to
Yes.
actually work and practice things in order to get the most benefit from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like, drinking a protein shake is not going to make you ripped. It's like you also still have to go to the gym and lift the weights.
I love that. That's such a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to hear more about your entrepreneurial journey. Because I know, like, actually, even some acupuncturists, it very much feels like your own business, but it's often still a little different than being an online business owner. So, talk to me about that transition.
Oh my God. Well, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 plus years. So my first business, I was a dog walker pet sitter in my late 20s. So yeah, the transition from acupuncturist, having a brick and mortar, very successful practice, which was pretty much all referral basis. It was so easy, for me. Um, it was a huge shift going online because I never had to have a brand. I never had to do social media posts to attract clients, right? I didn't have to sell myself. I never had to sell myself in any of my businesses that I had before.
Yeah.
And so the visibility aspect, like really leaning into that, was probably the most challenging, right? Selling. And for me, I was always a hider ever since I was little, always hiding, always hiding. And so even before I became an online business, I also do in-person, work as well. But um, I started doing visibility work way before I had an online business because I knew that I had this issue, that I was afraid to be seen, that I was afraid of what people thought about me. I was afraid of being my authentic self. And so I already had like a leg up, I guess, when I went into my online business. But still, selling to me is a spiritual practice. It is next level because you have to own who the fuck you are. You have to not give a shit about what people think, and really just radiate your essence, radiate your magic for all people to feel and not be apologetic about that.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest piece for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And did money stuff come up in a way that it hadn't prior?
Um, You know, there was actually a moment because I haven't historically had money issues. I like to joke that I popped out of my mom's womb with a really good relationship with money. But because my moon and my rising are both Capricorn. But yes, there was a moment where I was leaning into expanding into online business. This is towards the beginning of my online business. And I felt this fear come up in me, but it wasn't specifically around money. But it was partly connected to that. I was afraid of leaving people behind.
Mm,
And like, if I became too wealthy or too successful, or I became too well known or too visible, right? All these things, then I would abandon these people that I care about, or they would not want to connect with me because they would put me in another category or think I've changed or whatever those, things are, the thoughts that they might have. So I had to really do the work around letting that go, really like seeing for myself, like that's all makeup lies. And if that is actually true, those aren't my real friends anyway, right?
yeah.
So yeah, that was really the only main thing that has come up for me because I've been pretty abundant my whole life. Um, but I've always, my thing is more around community.
Mm, yeah. And I mean, can you share more about that? Because we're big on money transparency here. So when you're talking about being pretty abundant, like what does that look like?
Yeah, so I bought my first house when I was 27 years old. So even though I was a hot mess, I was like, I had this dual life. Like I was acting out and like gambling and drinking and smoking weed all the time, but also really good with my money, besides the gambling part. And so I was able to start investing in properties. And so
Mm,
that's really where my, wealth relatively, I didn't become a millionaire or anything like that, but I always felt always provided for. I always had passive income. And so, yeah, that was always something that I had, was that the real estate, right?
I love
And
that.
the tenants. I don't have that anymore because I wanted to downsize a few years ago because I was ready for something new. But then when I became an acupuncturist, I'd make, multiple six-figure a year.
Mhm.
So, there's so much more. I mean, I see myself absolutely being, making multi-millions in this online business.
Yeah.
I honestly just started full time in my business in June of this year. The last
Me
couple of
too.
years, huh?
Me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I was splitting between my agency and coaching. So I was full time as an entrepreneur, but it was
Mm.
like I was still spending some time with the seven-figure business that was the more consistent income, and then just switched all to my coaching business.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in a sabbatical. Like, I
Mm,
literally, during COVID, took, like, almost a year off fully, and then a couple of years after that, it was, like, a semi-sabbatical, so I was, like, experimenting with different programs and offerings and things like that, and then it wasn't until this year I was, like, ready. I was like, "Okay, I'm going
nice.
in, I'm putting my CEO hat on, and I'm doing the damn thing."
Yeah, I love it. So were you able to take a sabbatical because you had all the money from selling the rental properties?
Yes, I have plenty of savings
Yeah.
that could support me. And that's another thing. That's why I'm so all about financial wealth, right?
Yes.
It's like I am privileged in that way because I have the money to do that. And I mean, I know there's a lot of people who cannot. And I wish it for everybody, because I really
Yes.
think everybody should be able to take time off and a sabbatical if they need, you know. So I'm very blessed in that way.
I love that. Well, and I think too, especially like in healing work and in coaching work, it creates such a clean energy. It's like you're not selling a program because you need to pay rent next month. You're selling a program because it's your soul mission and it's the work that you want to be doing and that you feel that you're meant to be doing. And that that feels so nice. It's nice for you and it's nice for your clients.
100%. Yeah, I could just focus on that and not have to worry about, like, my nervous system, feeling unsafe or insecure. And so, yeah, I honestly feel like I am so lucky that I
Yeah.
don't have to come from that place.
So I'm always curious when I talk to people like you that just seem to have figured out money out of the womb. Because I'm like, did your parents not fuck you up? Did they not argue about money? Did you not see on the magazines that women were taught to cut coupons while men were taught to invest? Like, how did you miss all of that? Tell
It's
me
so
your
funny. Well,
secrets.
it's funny. I remember having memories of organizing my mom's money, because her money would just be all over the place. And I intuitively had this feeling like, it needs to be organized. You need to take care of your money, right? And I was probably like 11 at that time. I don't know. I used to pretend being a CEO at age 8. Like, I already, I had the desk. They said that I could pick out my own bedroom set at 8, and I picked out the one with the biggest oak desk because I wanted my bedroom to be like a CEO office. And I set it up that way. As soon as you walk in the door, you see me in my desk. And I used to steal when I was young, around that age, and I would only steal invoices, carbon copy, stationery, like, I was obsessed with being a business owner and CEO. But, like, besides that, my parents were also entrepreneurs, and my mom specifically, honestly, it wasn't anybody else. My mom was a biochemist, but then she turned into an entrepreneur. So she started investing in real estate. And she wasn't like a great real estate investor. Like, she wouldn't, like, she could have done things a lot better, but I saw what was possible with real estate, because we went from being poor too comfortable.
Mm.
And then also she would always do new projects. Like she was just like one of those multi-passionate entrepreneurs and try new things
Yeah.
and very courageous. And so I think just being in that energy also, even though she wasn't, and she didn't care, she wasn't like stressed about money. So I think I also picked that up. My
Mm.
parents weren't really stressed about it. They
Mhm.
trusted
Yeah.
that things would always work out somehow, even though they didn't say that. I think that was just in the field.
Mm.
And so got my first job at 13. My mom was the reason why I got that job. And I saved $8,000 by the time I was 16.
Wow.
And I was obsessed with like my bank account and like balancing my checking. Like I was obsessed with my credit score, like I've had a perfect credit score since I first got my credit. So, and it wasn't because my parents told me to. I don't know, there was something just in me around it, but I definitely think because they didn't hold on to scarcity around it, then I just didn't pick up on that.
Wow. That is so
Yeah.
fascinating.
And also I became like my first job, I was a mortgage broker, I was a banker, I was a realtor, I had my Series 7 license, which is the stockbroker's license.
Mm.
So I have experience in that world too.
Yeah.
I'm not just this woo-woo chick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I love that. It's so fun to, like, get to experience that side of you too. But I also believe that real estate in particular, it's one of the few places where easy money is really normalized. Really normalized. And so it's like having that entry point and having that experience, like, helps you to be in that paradigm of like, "Oh, well, you can just, like, live in a house," which you would need to do anyway, and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, well, that seems pretty great versus, trading time for dollars and that kind of thing, which, I mean, is sort of ironic because then you went to do, an acupuncture practice, which is a much more trade time for dollars sort of scenario. But you
Mhm.
already had that foundation of real estate and, probably just the possibilities of like money flowing to you in so many ways and passive ways.
Oh my God. I mean, that's the reason why I was able to go to acupuncture school without working as much as I just took a lot of time off because acupuncture school is obviously, a lot of time and energy. And I had to travel from Philly to New York back and forth 3 to 4 times a week for that. And so, having that passive income allowed me to really create my life, the life that I desired, to go after my passions. And yeah, I would highly suggest anybody who has a desire to, go into real estate to do that. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, by the way, like I did not do it perfectly. I just want everybody who's listening to know that, like, I spent way too much money, like renovating the homes, like just tons and tons of loss of money, but I learned so much every time and did it better the next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, passive income is where it's at.
Mhm. I love that.
And then equity too, right? Like
Yeah.
we talked about that aspect as well, like selling it later on and the equity that I received from that. So
Yeah.
it's just good all the way around.
Yeah. It's like money now and money later. Okay. Yes, please.
And then tax deductions. Let's talk about that too, right?
Yeah.
Like there's all these different angles.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. Okay. What's feeling really alive in your business right now? What are some ways that you're working with clients or a program that you're working on?
Mm. Well, I feel so excited about my business right now. Like I think mostly because the women that have been attracted to me lately for my one-on-one bespoke offerings are midlife women. So I'm turning 48 next week on Tuesday, actually. And I have a lot of millennials that work with me, but now more midlife women are starting to work with me. And I realized that this is a group that I really want to work with because I went through a midlife portal last year when I turned 47. And I felt like, how do I really want to live and enter into the next half of my life?
Mm,
People start thinking about their mortality and, am I really living in the fullness of my desire? Like, am I actually really honoring what I want and need. And so I find that these women that are coming to work with me, they've given so much of themselves to their work, to their kids, to everyone else except for themselves. And now they're like, hold on a second, right?
Yeah.
Like, what? Hold on, wait, what just happened? No, 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 no. Let's back up, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
This has been super exciting for me. Of course, I'm open to working with other people as well, but I really love supporting these women in one-on-one work, and I'm going to be creating a group program for them as well, so they can feel juicy in their
Yes.
body and juicy in their life, and just be like, you know what, I'm going for it. Be
Yes.
courageous in this, you know?
Absolutely. Like it keeps getting better and better.
Exactly. It just keeps getting better and better. And it doesn't have to be this death sentence of like, oh, this is what life is.
Yeah.
No, there's so much more. There's so much more.
Oh, I love that.
Now, whether it's like with purpose work or,
Yeah.
creativity, like one of the clients that I'm working with, like she's super successful. And so she's fine with where she's at, except she wants to live her life with more creativity and like go to Paris and not always be worried about her son, right? And
Yeah.
so it's different for everybody. And then other people, like they're like, what do I want to do for work? I did this my whole life, I've been an executive in finance, like well known in finance, but is this really making me happy?
Mm, yeah. Where can people find you if they want to connect with your podcast or to you or your programs?
Taoofpo.com. So it's TAOOFPO.com. And I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. It's easier to just follow the links because writing my name can be hard for people. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm starting to dabble in LinkedIn. But yeah, I have a membership coming out in January as well. So that's a great way to taste my work and get to know me even more.
Amazing. Well, we'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes so everyone listening can go follow you. And my final question is, can you share what it looks like to be on your joyous path to millions?
Oh, wow. It feels like following magical breadcrumbs and really trusting the process of leaning into owning all the abundance that's available to me, really, stepping even more into the visibility and allowing people to come with me on the ride. It means that I'm turned on and like in my body, like I actually feel excited and delicious and juicy, because I honestly, like, to me, I don't care about making millions if I'm not feeling good, you
Yes,
know? And
I agree.
so I want it all. And so if I'm not feeling good, that's it's not enough.
That's
I
right.
want to feel vibrant, and I do feel vibrant, and I think that's why the magnetizing is happening. That's why the clients come, is because they can feel that as well.
Yes. The juicy, delicious path to millions.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's the only way in my book.
That's right. Amazing. Poe, thank you so much for coming on the show. To everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. How great was that? I hope you all loved Poe as much as I do. So please go follow her online. Tag Poe, tag me at M Makes Money. Let us know that you listened to the episode and share your key takeaways with us. And I will share mine. Number 1, right-sided issues. I loved how she talked about that, that oftentimes that it there's repressed anger in our bodies, especially as women, and that shows up as quote unquote right-sided issues that they see in acupuncture. Number 2, numbness and the idea of accessing feelings. This is something I see in some of my clients as well at times where when I ask them, like, what do you really want? And how do you really think that's going to make you feel? They go blank. They really don't know. And I get it because I used to be that way too. I really didn't know why I wanted to hit a certain number or why I wanted my business to be successful. And that's a clue that there are parts of yourself that you can't yet access, and it's an invitation to get curious and start to lean into that inner work. And number 3, you can use plant medicines to access that if it's a tool that you're curious about. And I love that we went there and talked about the magic of psilocybin and how it can support you in that journey of softening. Number 4, allowing yourself to seek guidance and inspiration from all places. I love that she talked about her dad and how he's her spiritual teacher. And it's really cool to think that it doesn't just have to be a coach that we hire online. It can be a book that we read, or so many places we might meet someone in our community that we feel really drawn to and we recognize their wisdom, and just allowing ourselves to be guided and inspired in all the ways through all the people. And number 5, following that light. She talked about that little light that was just a flicker for her for a long time, but just following whatever that means to you, following it to happiness, to that juicy, delicious, turned on living. So those were my top takeaways. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I've got a great interview coming up in the next episode with Celia Faye Maisel, and we're going to be talking all about selling and how to bring in that money. So stay tuned. Listeners like you have made this a top 3% global podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share, and leave a review. I also love hearing listener feedback, so feel free to slide into my DMs on Instagram @mmakesmoney. If you would like to explore hiring me as your money healer and business mentor, hit the link in the show notes or head to explore.emilywilcox.com. Until next time, I'm sending you all the magic money vibes on your joyous path to millions.